Are we serious about it? Or are we just making these conversations around these rooms and these safe havens in which we can discuss and talk about? Is it happening on the ground?
By listening to the presentations yesterday and this morning, I confirm that it's very important what has been said in this panel and everywhere else, that we have to distinguish concepts and objectives, and we have to be very clear about that. When we're talking about transparency, we only mean access to information. When we're talking about accountability of the decisions made, we're talking about something that requires transparency. There's no accountability without transparency and access to information, but transparency is not enough for bringing accountability to the decision-making process. Then you have other tools that are around, auditing, fiscalization, control, independent monitoring, and the top part of it, prosecution, justice. So we have a lot of concepts, and probably by simplifying everything under the umbrella of transparency, we're not paying enough respect for the complexity of each one of these agendas. So my first point is that I'm really fascinated by the conversation, especially the one about competition in markets. I think it was very, very important for everyone here to talk about that. But we have to refrain ourselves from using concepts as synonyms when they are not. No? This is a kind of complexity that you were mentioning yesterday, in the international arena is happening right now. So I really want to make a brief comment on this. Second, when we're talking about sectors, and I think the organizers were very clever in putting us after the discussion of markets. Sectors are really markets. So we have to understand better how markets operate and behave. And I'm going to refer to one particular market, the market associated with extractive industries. I was a board member of EITI for 2 years, and I learned a lot about two things. One, naturally the extractive industries markets, which are very different from gas to oil to electricity to I don't know, obtaining coal or cement, creating cement, or even in forestry. So we have to be very careful that we really understand how markets operate. Even in countries like Mexico, I'm pretty sure that India is the same, that have a lot of complexity because we have state-owned companies, public-private partnerships, we have all the ecosystem there. We have to be very clear that when we are entering a sector, we have to subdivide that sector into very specific markets. They look the same, but they are not the same. And competition is rather different, as we saw in the previous presentation, for each one of these mini markets. Just to point out an example, a recent example from Mexico, we specialized a lot just in the gas transport sub-market, and it's really difficult to have a very good understanding of the complexity of that market. You can say energy, and you're saying nothing when you're talking about markets. No? You have to be very specialized, and the tools we're talking about have to be the right ones for each one of the markets. That's my third point. For instance, Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative is all about disclosure of royalties and payments, and so it's very important for the economics of the extractive industry, but it's not bringing anything on the integrity of the system. We're just disclosing information, which is very important because in certain countries, probably this is not the case of India or Mexico, because we have access to information laws for a long time now. But in certain economies or certain countries, disclosing information about royalties, tax payments, and even the relationship between the government and companies is quite difficult, especially in some countries in Africa. So to a certain extent, when you're dealing with extractive industries, disclosing information is enough. But it's not the case for Mexico or India. I'm pretty sure that we need more than disclosing information. So there are other tools for discussing this. Well, Donald was mentioning the Water Integrity Network that has a specialization in one particular issue. Let's try to make it a market. The which has another subset of markets, hydropower stations, special water treatment units. I don't know, in cities we have different issues there, so we have to specialize in concrete markets even within the water sector. Cost, that was already mentioned. We have also AITI, which is for aid, and is also associated with certain investments, public investments, when the multilateral agencies are taking part, or bilateral agencies. We have a lot of work on budgets. Now there is this budget transparency index. So my point here is that there are several tools for different purposes, but as Rick was mentioning a few minutes ago, we have to make sense of the ecosystem as well. We need to start connecting. You did something wonderful yesterday. You tried to connect all the dots in these issues, but we really have to understand that there are different tools for different purposes, and they may have always the word transparency on them, but actually they serve a different role. And now we have cross-sector initiatives, the Open Government Partnership, G20 is working on open data and beneficial ownership. I think my colleague Oya is going to make a presentation on that issue as well. You have her presentation on the program. Then you have the Open Contracting Partnership. Within the Open Contracting Partnership, you have the Open Contracting Data Standard, just for releasing open data within open contracting. So, we have so many initiatives now that we have to start thinking about ecosystems and how they connect one to each other.